So hello, here I am. And I'm a little bit behind schedule, but I had a long day and a good day at the same time. I have a lot of stuff to share with you guys, so I hope you're ready. I started out saying that the title of this message is going to be Our People Are Destroyed by the Lack of Knowledge. And let me look at that scripture while I'm waiting. So I am still at my daughter's house. I'm away from my home base, and I am sitting on this little girly bed in the guest room. And so I'm as comfortable as I possibly can be. I must have driven for at least 4 hours today. So I hope that you guys are able to join me, okay, because I have a lot of good material to share with you today. And if you can't make it because I was an hour late, I understand. I'm trying to decide if I should wait till next week. So, anyways, I wanted to share with you some information about what's going on, some of the stuff that's been going on in the government that we don't know about and that we haven't been knowing about. And I want to start out with a scripture that says, "My people are destroyed by the lack of knowledge." And I believe that's found in Hosea, so I just want to make sure I give it to you. Yes, Hosea 4:6, okay? It says, "My people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also reject you as my priest. And because you have ignored the law, of your father or creator," it says God, "I will ignore your children." Okay, so that's what we're looking at today. And I really wanted to leave that with you today because if you know that that there is knowledge that you don't have, you might want to have it. You might want to get it, right? So I'm trying to see who's online. But anyways, who's running America? So, dear Father, I just pray that you will be with us today and help us to understand the truth as it is, word, and what's going on in our lives today. Please bless me, help me to carry forth this message as you would have it heard, and let your perfect will be done in all of our lives. We pray and thank thee. Amen. So, let's see. I'm still here. I'm late. Okay, so I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch this later. Okay, so, well, since I'm here and I have the time and my 2 granddaughters are downstairs making a lot of noise, I'll probably just go ahead and share a little bit. So what I wanted to talk to you today about who's running America and how that all happened and how it affects you and I. So I started out researching or studying with some friends, and of course through Bible prophecy, and finding out about the end times and what's going to happen in the last days or end times. Then it caused me to continue searching. So I came across this article on who is running America, and that is found on. Let's see. That is found new, no, that's not the same. No, that's not the way. Okay, that's found on Off the Grid News. Okay, OFFTHEGRID News. Okay, so it says who is running America, and I wanted to read to you some excerpts from that page. But before I do, I want to go back to a blog that I had written here, and it's called Uncle Sam, Your Baby's Daddy, and trying to explain to you how we got in the situation that we are in now with the American dollar. Okay, so, yeah, done with that. I'm typing it in the little window. Even in America, because we got to get this knowledge, people. And that's why I've committed myself to coming here week after week and trying to explain to you what's going on and what I've learned and what I believe, okay? So in the Anti-Corruption Society article, it starts out saying that they have some excerpts here from, let's see, page 4, the Independent Treasury Act, okay? And my article is actually about the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank, okay? So in 1962, over 50 years ago, the national debt was $248 billion. Now it is 20 trillion, okay, over $20 trillion. You can look on the U.S. debt clock and find that out. So it's over $21 trillion right now. We did nothing about it then, but we just kept on printing more money, spending more money in the United States, and loaning money like we have an endless supply of greenbacks. And in reality, the United States Federal Reserve Bank has been in the red since 1913. And the chart below will give you some perspectives at the rate of the deficit has been climbing in 1962. Now, I know you can't see the chart below, but when I finish, I'll put the links, all the links that you can see, that you want. You can look at them there. So the numbers are staggering. The United States public debt is the money borrowed by the federal government of the United States at any one time through the issue of securities by the Treasury and other federal government agencies. The gross public debt comprises two components. Debt held by government accounts, also known as intragovernmental holdings, that is, Treasury, securities, etc. Debt held by the public. These Treasury securities are held in accounts that are administered by the federal government, such as the Social Security Trust Fund. And the debt held by the public, that is, securities that are held by investors outside of the federal government, including those that are held by the Federal Reserve System and those of state and local governments. And this is the net public debt, okay? And so what happened basically is the federal budget deficit or surplus is the cash difference between the government receipts and spending, okay? So what happened is that they continue basically to keep on printing money outside of the amount of money of Federal Reserve gold that was in the Federal Reserve Bank. And the Federal Reserve Bank is, I'm going to explain to you how our nation got in this situation, and what does it have to do with you and me, and then go on and share a little bit. Maybe I won't share as much today because I didn't get to, I didn't get here on time today, so I apologize for that. Welcome, Gary and Eddie. So what I'm really trying to explain here is how Revelation 13 and the end times has to do at what's going on in the world today. And so over the weeks, I've been talking about Daniel and Revelation and what's going on in the world today. I started talking about that last week. Okay, and so we found out during those times is that our government is actually $20 trillion in debt. And how they continue to print money is really shocking, And so they continue to print money over what was in the Federal Reserve Bank, So this is what I'm trying to explain to you is how we're going to end up, in a cashless society. About 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, I remember hearing about the petrodollar and how Iran was refusing to take it. And the petrodollar is the dollar that all oil is brought by all countries is traded in United States dollars. You see, and once they refuse to take it, then other countries are going to start following along. And that is even going to lessen the value of the American dollar. And so while we are $20 million in debt, we're also going to be getting this money sent back to us from other countries that no longer need it, to do trade, you see. So how did we get in this situation? That's the question. When I learned what I'm about to share with you, it was like discovering that I was part of the matrix. Most of us are, and here's how. Our birth certificate is one area. And it seems that none of us have our original birth certificates. I learned that they are all copies, and the copies have a serial number on them that's issued in a specific bank bond paper and authorized by the American Banknote Company. So you might be wondering what that is, okay? So also, I just want to apologize for my camera. I have been away from home, so I'm at my daughter's house in her children's room on the camera and my laptop, so it's not as good. But I just wanted to get this message out today because there's so much more that we need to know. Okay, so in 1913, again, the American Banknote Corporation is a corporation and world leader, providing secure payments, retail, and ID cards. They also provide vital record and transaction documents, systems, and services to governments and financial institutions. And it's one of the largest producers of plastic transaction cards in the world. ABC Corp, the organization, was originally a major worldwide engraver of national currency and postage stamps. So on April 29th, 1858, following the panic of 1857, seven of the nation's most prominent security printers merged to form the American Banknote Company. Okay, the new company made New York City's headquarters, in New York City, and that was less than 2 years later. The remaining handful of independent banknote printers, they merged to form the National Banknote Company that we know today. So they wanted to be close to the stock exchange, brokerage firms, and bankers in Lower Manhattan. The American Banknote Company established its headquarters in New York City. And this is what we're going to find out why that's important, you see. The first paper currency was circulated by the U.S. Treasury Department following the outbreak of the Civil War. Congress passed authorizing legislation for $60 million worth of these demand notes on July 17th and August 5th of 1861 under contract with the government. The novel paper money called greenbacks by the public was produced by the American Banknote Company. Now, what I'm reading to you is from a blog that I actually have here on Facebook that I've written a couple of years ago. And you can look for it, or I'll leave the link to it underneath here. Okay, so a total of 7.25 million notes were produced in denominations of $5, $10, and $20 bills. In an interesting historical sidelight, American and nationals were also producing paper money for the Confederacy at the same time. So what happened? Okay. Following the initial production of U.S. currency by the government's Bureau of Engraving and Printing in 1862, A, B, and O's sought a new source of demand for its services, and they found it in foreign lands. The company would eventually go on to supply security paper and banknotes to 115 countries. So it's not just America that's in this situation. A lot of other countries are in the same situation. Okay, so in 1944, the American banknote, they started issuing also share certificates. The truth is stranger than what you would ever imagine. So what happened is that by 1913, the United States was short of cash. During World War I, it had depleted the treasury, and there were several really bad financial panics in 1907 especially. So the country needed to print more money than it had as equity to restore the confidence in the money supply and get the economy back on its feet. So how can they do this? That's a great question, you might ask. You see, when you or I need money, we use something called or collateral, and we go to the bank and we get a loan. But when a country needs more money, it has to go somewhere else. But in 1913, there wasn't anywhere else to go. So the United States created the Federal Reserve Act, and this established a private central bank, the Federal Reserve Bank, that would regulate the amount of money that the U.S. government was allowed to borrow and put into circulation. So again, in 1913, there wasn't anywhere else to go with the United States ran out of money. Okay, so at that time, the Federal Reserve Bank was created, and it regulated the amount of money that the U.S. government was allowed to borrow and to put in circulation. Okay, but the key is, of course, like any other loaner, it expects to be repaid, like any other bank with interest. So it says that after only 20 years, things went from bad to worse. And during Franklin D. Roosevelt's presidency, in 1933, the U.S. was unable to pay its debt, and the country was bankrupt. The private banks that made up the Federal Reserve demanded their money, and Roosevelt responded. He had to use the only thing left of any value to pay the banks and continue doing business with the banks. Okay, so the only thing he had left was the citizens of our country. That's right, you and me. So what happened next is exactly how all this was orchestrated is really too lengthy to be addressed here, but this much can be told. The original birth certificate or naturalization records for every United States citizen is on file in the official records in Washington, D.C. You get to keep a copy, and the property and assets of every living U.S. citizen is pledged as collateral for the national debt. Okay, that's deep. So I'm going to read it again. All right. The original birth, or naturalization record for every citizen is on file. The original, we get a copy, is on file in the official records in Washington, D.C. You and I get a copy. And the property and the assets, all of our property and all of our assets of every living U.S. citizen is pledged as collateral towards the national debt. In other words, to pay off the national debt. This means we now have to work to pay back the bad debt that our government created. How many people want to do that? I wish I can get somebody to pay off my debt. So within 2 weeks and 3 days, each certificate of live birth is to be filed in Washington, D.C. Evidence reveals that there is even a federal children's department established by the Shepard-Townsend Act of 1922 under the Department of Commerce that appears to be involved in this process in some way. And every citizen is given a number, the red number on the birth certificate. You can go look at yours after we get done here. And each live birth is valued from $650,000 to $750,000 Federal Reserve dollars in collateral from the federal government, you see. So, and also what I learned is about the mortgages. Say, when you buy a house, your mortgage is actually put on the stock market, so you don't own your mortgage, they sell it on the stock market, so the bank no longer holds your loan, but yet we continue to pay them. And another thing that you might not know is that for every dollar you put in the bank, whether it's in your checking account, whether it's in your saving account, or when you pay your mortgage and when you pay your bills, they get to claim $9 on every dollar that we put in. So, but they don't even actually have to have, the money that they have on paper in the actual bank. We all know. I worked at a bank for 5 years. And so I know they don't have all that money in the bank, So when your house is actually paid off, the original deed goes to the bank, not to you. You get a copy. You see, so we don't really own anything. We are owned, okay? So I am sharing with you stuff that I've known for some time, and I'm just, as I continue to start studying again to see what was going on in the world today, I was probably a little disgusted and shocked, and so I decided to start sharing this stuff with you guys. And it's easy to do this research for yourself. Don't take my word for it, okay? So because they placed a price on our head, it now made us slaves. All of us are caught up in this madness, or what they call the matrix, or the nightmare. Okay, and it's true that we are really slaves to pay back the debt. Okay, so our new current slave leader it's Donald Trump. He's a businessman, and this is why he is the perfect man for the job right now, because the United States is a corporation, not a company. Okay, and so I'm going to read to you how that happened in a little bit from another article. And a lot of the stuff you can find, Black's Law is where a lot of this type of information comes from. And I'm going to show you some other stuff that's really important about who's running America and why I said that, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because the more I study what's going on in the world today and the reason why they did this, it is so clearly is like an overlay in the world of what's going on in the book of Revelation and end times and in the Bible, which we have already exhausted. And we will come back to it again. So just stay patient. So, again, like I said, I believe that Donald Trump got the job right now because he is a businessman and the United States is a corporation and the dollar is about to fall. I believe that they allowed Obama to become president at a time when we were bankrupt because, we know how to handle money, right? Black people, we know how to get out of some debt. And now that's just my own personal way of saying, they had a use for him. Because they wanted the world to trust them again after the Republicans lost all that money and all the banks went under and the cars companies went under. Okay. So I'll be doing a series of lectures on this subject continually, and you'll be able to listen to them and learn what you can do for yourself and for your family to get out of this corrupt system. And that's what my family and I are doing right now. It's time to wake up and start taking some control by learning as much as you can to try and keep it as simple as possible. Okay, yet as thorough as possible. I'm trying to keep it as simple and thorough as possible. Okay, so there's a public debt that is subscribed to all Americans from the time that we are born, and we are expected to pay it back. Okay, and I've been doing some studying, again, like I said, on what you and I can do to liberate ourselves and connecting with some people that have, and this is not to promote fear or anger, in any of these things that I'm talking about. But just use wisdom, pray and be careful because, I remember that movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Every Christmas I'd watch it, old black and white movie. And this man and his family owned this bank or I guess a savings and loan for a long time. And I guess the stock market crashed and all the people came running to the bank. And they wanted their money, and the bank didn't have it. If you actually read your paperwork that you get from the bank, you'll see that they don't have to have all the money in the bank. And so they can actually keep all your money. And when the economy crashes, you can't. If you have $100,000, $1 million, $2 million, you can lose everything. And that's what happened. Some people killed themselves back when the economy crashed a few years ago when the banks went under and the car companies. I read about some bankers that even jumped out of the windows, of these high-rise buildings because they couldn't fathom the idea of living, without cash. But we, who are Christians or whatever it is that we call ourselves, Christians, whatever religion you are or faith you are, we have to trust. We know that we trust in God as our provider and not greenbacks. And so this is what we need to do is we need to start trusting like we never have before, in our Father, our Creator, that He's going to provide for us just like He always has. So as I said, I'll continue to do a series of lectures